If you were born between roughly 1976 and 1984, I need you to sit down for this one because the transit that just started, it's the opening act of your Chiron return. And even if you weren't born in those years, if you're a woman in midlife, this shift is going to touch something tender in all of us. Chiron has just moved into Taurus, and the collective wound we've been working on is changing. So let's talk about it. Hey, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Nancy, and this channel is where midlife gets real. We talk about the Chiron return, midlife astrology, and all the stuff nobody prepares us for in midlife. Not as a guru, just as a fellow woman who is in this right beside you. So here's the news. On June 19th, Chiron, the wounded healer, left Aries and moved into Taurus. Quick refresher if this is new to you. Chiron represents our deepest core wound, the tender place we spend our whole lives learning to heal. And when Chiron changes signs, the flavor of the collective wound changes, for lack of a better word. What humanity is being asked to heal shifts. And I've got a whole video breaking down Chiron and the Chiron return. And I'll link it up in the corner here and in the description if you want to learn more about that. Now, one important thing before you start panic Googling your chart. Chiron isn't staying in Taurus just yet. It's going to retrograde back into Aries, which is where it's been in the fall, I believe September, and give us one more pass through the Aries lessons before it settles into Taurus for the long haul in 2027. So here's how I want you to think about that. This is a preview and then a review. Taurus is giving us a taste of the new curriculum right now. And then Aries comes back around for final exams. So, whatever gets stirred up for you this summer, pay attention. It's the syllabus. My Chiron is in Aries. So, I've been going through it. If your Chiron is in Aries, you've also been going through it since about 2018. So, get ready for the final exams. So, let's talk about what's actually changing. For the past several years, Chiron in Aries has been asking us one question over and over. Do I have the right to exist as myself? The Aries wound is an identity wound, right? Who am I when I'm not performing? Who am I when I'm not somebody's mom, somebody's wife, somebody's employee? Am I allowed to take up space? Am I allowed to want things for myself? So if the last 4 years have cracked your sense of self wide open, that was the assignment. And I know it was exhausting. But Chiron in Taurus asks us a different question. It asks, do I have the right to be safe? The Taurus wound is a worth wound, not a who am I, but what am I worth and who taught me that number, that value. And listen, everyone's going to tell you Chiron in Taurus is about money. I don't believe that it's about money. It's about whether you believe you deserve to keep what you build, and that includes money. For women our age, here's where this typically lands. Money and security. It's not fully about money, it's about security with money, right? The scarcity fears that show up at 2 a.m., the panic about retirement, about starting over financially after a divorce or any big life shift, whether it's too late to do any of those things. A lot of us inherited scarcity programming from our mothers, our grandmothers, women who generally didn't have financial safety or autonomy for that matter. Chiron and Taurus brings that inheritance up for review. Taurus rules the physical body, and midlife is when so many of us feel somewhat betrayed by ours, right? We're dealing with perimenopause, the changes in the mirror, the grief that nobody warned you about, and not the grief of getting older, the grief of life passing, right? The knowledge that perhaps you've lived longer in the past than you are in the future, or your kids are grown up, and a lot of these pivotal moments of you building have already happened, right? And now you're facing this next chapter. This transit in Taurus says that your body is not the enemy, right? You should be proud of your body. It's the home that you've been taught to fight with, right? A lot of societal expectations around appearance and things like that, that fortunately you grow out of in midlife, but you have to feel it before you move through it. The third thing, the way that Chiron and Taurus will affect you in midlife is rest and pleasure. I always felt like rest had to be earned. I grew up on a farm. There were a lot of chores, and my parents, my father especially, never sat down and watched TV. He was always working. Productivity meant was directly tied to your sense of value. So as kids on the farm, there's always a million and one things to do. And if you were caught sitting around, you were not being productive and you usually got in trouble. So that wound of earning rest or comfort is something that still kind of follows me to this day. And that follows many of us, I think, in this Gen X generation. Many of us learned that rest has to be earned. That pleasure is what you get after the to-do list is done. And that list is never done. So Taurus says comfort is not a reward. It's a birthright that you were talked out of. We're here to live this life, experience this life, not work our way through it. Okay, so now's the part that you have to sit down for. If you were born roughly between 1976 and 1984, your natal Chiron is in Taurus, which means when Chiron settles into Taurus, it's heading home back to where it was the day that you were born. That is your Chiron return. Your exact return depends on the degree of your natal Chiron. This is going to unfold over the next few years. It's not an overnight thing. It's not a, one and done transit. The woman born earliest in this window are the first in line. But this ingress, this is just the first knock on the door. Here's what you might be already noticing though. Old money wounds resurfacing. This is going to sound a little familiar. Not just budget stress, the feelings underneath that. Shame about debt. Fear you'll end up with nothing. The sense that everyone else has it figured out. Everyone else has this nest egg of security and that you missed the class. And maybe it's too late to catch up. And none of that is true, by the way. You just might be feeling that now. Body grief. Looking in the mirror, not recognizing yourself, right? Maybe mourning the body you had or the body that you spent decades criticizing and now you wish you'd appreciate it. You might feel a sudden urgency about safety. Maybe you're thinking about where you're going to live when you get older, or lying awake and doing the math of how you're going to afford to live when you get older. And that's not random anxiety. That is Chiron asking you to look at what safety means for you. Questioning enough money, enough house, enough achievement. And underneath all of it, am I enough even when I'm not producing? So if any of that is you, take heart. This is the work of midlife. And the whole point of a Chiron return is that the wound comes up so that it can finally heal. Here's the good part. What to actually do with all of this. I'm not going to leave you with just, trust the universe. So here's the real life homework or self-work. 3 things. Pick what fits for you. 1, journaling prompt, right? Where did I learn what I'm worth? And sit with that one. It happened in childhood at some point in time, probably before you were 6 or 7 years old. Whose voice do you hear, right? Your mother's, a teacher, an ex, reinforcing something that you may have heard when you were a child. Write down the earliest memory you have of feeling like you weren't enough or like safety was for other people. That memory is probably holding a thread of this Taurus wound. 2, come up with 1 body-based practice. Taurus doesn't heal in your head, it heals in your body. So this month, pick 1 physical act of unearned comfort and do it regularly. A slow meal that you actually taste, getting your feet in the grass, a nap that you didn't deserve, right? I'm serious. For a Taurus wound, the nap is the healing work. And 3, 1 reframe to carry with you. Right? Safety isn't something you earn. It's something that you are allowed to build. So say it. Say it until it stops feeling like a lie. Now, everything I've shared today is the collective picture, but Chiron sits at a specific degree in a specific house in your chart. And that placement tells you where this wound lives in your actual life, right? Taurus, the sign, tells you what the wound is. The house that it sits in your particular chart tells it how it plays out in your life, right? Does it affect your money? Does it affect your body? Does it affect your relationships? Does it come up at work? Together determines, not only the natal degree determines when it peaks, but how it truly affects you. And that is something that we map together in a midlife blueprint reading. So if you want to know what Chiron and Taurus means for you specifically, not just your generation or generally, the link is in the description below. And lastly, if this video landed, please do me a favor, share it with a friend born in the late 70s or 80s. She probably needs the heads up and she probably needs to hear that she's not alone. I will see you in the next one. Until then, keep rising.